This is a beautiful book on my shelf. It's the Heritage Press edition of The Flowers of Evil by Charles Baudelaire. It's got the classic slipcase, the sandglass insert, and these haunting illustrations, and yet I'm unhauling it. Today I want to talk about why sometimes a perfect edition is actually the wrong edition for you, and how Baudelaire's legacy actually makes this polite book feel a little bit out of place. Heritage Press was like an everyman's fine press. They took the high-end designs of the limited editions book club from the George Macy Company and made them accessible and affordable. And a volume like this is a good example of mid-century, mid-20th century, middle-brow culture. I have a lot of Heritage Press in my collection. And this is a really nice edition, a nice copy, near fine. The illustrations by Pierre-Yves Trémois capture the grotesque beauty of Baudelaire, and he does this in heavy lines, distorted bodies, nudes, sort of combining also with French script, and it just kind of conveys some of the chaos and the agony that Baudelaire writes about in Flowers of Evil. But here's the catch. The English translations of the poems by various poets or translators didn't quite hit the mark for me. So for a poet like Baudelaire, whose rhythm and music are so tied to the French language, reading this 20th century translation without the original text alongside it, like Heritage Press did with Petrarch in Italian-facing original versus the translation, this feels like you're looking at a black and white photo at sunset. So the translations really make a difference. I used to have an Oxford World Classics edition of Baudelaire, and if memory serves, that did have the French alongside of it, and I unhauled that a few years ago. I probably should have kept it, but I had read it. I read through it, and I thought, well, I'll just keep this one like as a sort of shelf-appealed copy, and I just unhauled it. Let's get into some of the background of the book real briefly. The title, Les Fleurs du Mal, in French, mal isn't just moral evil. It sounds like, is this a book about Satanism or something? It's not. Mal can be about sickness. It's the spleen, that deep existential boredom and depression that comes out of our existence. Baudelaire was an alchemist. He wanted to take the mud of the city and turn it into the gold of poetry. So the French word mal is broader than the English word evil, and it translates to, yes, evil as in moral corruption or sin. It can also mean physical and mental suffering or sickness, and it can mean emotional distress, pain, grief. So the title of the book doesn't just mean poems about being a bad person. It means the growth that comes out of suffering and sickness. Baudelaire often referred to his poems as unhealthy flowers or sickly flowers. Now, there's a central paradox in the Flowers of Evil. The poetry back in Baudelaire's day in 19th century France was supposed to be about good things, nature, God, pure love, sunshine, and rainbows, romantic love, and all that. But Baudelaire had a different mission in mind. He wanted to extract beauty from evil. And he uses the symbolism of a flower for this. The flower represents the art, the perfect, fragile, beautiful form of the poem. And evil is the raw material, the subject matter, the roots, the poverty, decay, lust, addiction, and the grime of industrial Paris. By putting these together, he's saying that the poet's job is like an alchemist, to turn the lead of the miserable, sinful, ennui-filled life into the gold of a beautiful poem. And Baudelaire believed that every human being is pulled in two opposite directions at the same time. You've got your spleen, that is his word, his symbol for boredom, depression, the animal urge towards sin and death. And then you have the ideal, the spiritual urge toward God, beauty, and perfection. And the Flowers of Evil, the book, is kind of about that tug of war. These are beautiful poems that are rooted in dark, decaying soil. It was a controversial book, so shocking that Baudelaire was fined for insulting public decency, and he had to remove poems from the collection. He's writing about vampires and lesbians and decay and filth and addiction and all kinds of stuff. And the authorities didn't really see a lot of beauty there. They saw what was on the surface. And it wasn't until later in the 20th century that the ban on some of these poems was officially lifted in France. And then I see also a connection between Baudelaire and the decadent poets of the late 19th century and the emergent Beat generation, which came out of San Francisco and also New York City and other places. If you're a fan of the Beat generation, people like Allen Ginsberg or Jack Kerouac or William S. Burroughs, you ought to be a fan of Baudelaire too. He is their spiritual godfather. He anticipates what the Beats were going to get up to in the mid to late 20th century. Baudelaire also, in a sense, invented the idea of the flaneur, the guy who just wanders the city, soaking in the chaos of all the environment around him. And that's exactly what Jack Kerouac is doing in On the Road. It's just with more horsepower. They were speeding around America in automobiles. And then Hal, very Baudelairean, I think, in its concept, and this also received a lot of flack for obscenity, and it went to trial when Hal came out in 1957. So Ginsberg is walking the same path that Baudelaire walked down. They both believe that you find the holy or the beatific by going through the darkness, not by avoiding the darkness. Beat and beatnik, Beat generation, that has a double meaning. So you can be beaten down by life, by your circumstances, by your environment, by your culture, by other people, but it's also beatific. You find the holy, and the two overlap. So, Baudelaire, good poet, great poet for sure. Why am I getting rid of this book? Well, this Heritage Press edition is really nice. It's too clean, though. It feels like a book meant for a library with a rolling ladder and a glass of, expensive brandy, or you're sipping your scotch, and you're going to pick up this Baudelaire off the shelf. Maybe a cigar will be involved, and surely a leather armchair. But I feel like Baudelaire is more a poet of the gutter, of the garret, the jazz club, the dark night of the soul. So there's a little bit of a mismatch there. I realized I really want a copy of Baudelaire that I can keep in my pocket. I would like the facing French text too. I want something that feels more Beat. Maybe a battered paperback, a bilingual edition that I can mark up with a pen, something that's really used and gritty and floppy. And I will keep my eye out for such a book. I'm unhauling this because I realized I'm keeping it for the aesthetic of a collector rather than the experience of being a reader, something you always have to watch out for, I think. So this Heritage Press Baudelaire is going to a new home. I'm going to donate it to the local charity bookshop, and if it sells there, that money will go towards our local food bank here in town, and hopefully someone who appreciates the text and the artwork more than I do. I would rate this probably like a 9 out of 10 for aesthetics and a 4 out of 10 for my personal reading vibe. And you know, if those illustrations were more striking to me, I might keep it a little longer. But most of this boils down to the text. I just didn't think translations were that good. I've read so many better translations of Baudelaire online in other books. So I'll keep my eye out for a replacement copy, something in paperback. That's it. Thanks for watching. If you have comments on Baudelaire or questions, you know where to leave them right here. And I hope you come back real soon. Bye-bye.